It all started with a handwritten letter, carefully typed and signed in blue ink by Captain Jessica Harper, a 28-year-old nutrition officer at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, a sprawling base nestled among green hills near the Tennessee border. The letter wasn't political or official. It was deeply personal. "Dear Miss Leavitt," it read, "I challenge you to try our MREs. No cameras, just you sitting with us, eating what soldiers eat." Jessica wrote the letter after a grueling week designing menus for troops training in the mud, inspired by a soldier's joke that the MRE beef stew tasted like a bad breakup. She laughed, wondering what Karoline Leavitt, the 27-year-old White House press secretary, would say about it. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. Jessica didn't expect a reply, so when her phone buzzed 3 days later with a call from the White House, she nearly dropped it. "This is Karoline Leavitt," a warm, playful voice said. "I read your letter. What's on the menu?" The next morning Fort Campbell was abuzz. Secret Service agents arrived to scout the base. Soldiers whispered excitedly, and Jessica prepared for the unthinkable. Leavitt was actually coming. Known for her Gen Z swagger in press briefings with phrases like "no cap" and turning posts into viral hits, Leavitt was a phenomenon. But was she ready for an MRE? In the chaotic White House press office, Leavitt sat amid stacks of briefings, juggling interviews and joking about rumors. Jessica's letter made her pause. "Army food, for real," she muttered. But her eyes sparkled with curiosity. As a young spokesperson, she often wondered, am I really making a difference? This challenge was a chance to live the story she wanted to tell. She called Jessica immediately. "All right, Captain, I'm in," she said, half joking. "But if this stew is awful, I'm blaming you." Jessica laughed. "Bring your fighting spirit, no TikTok filters needed." Leavitt stood, adjusted her coat, and texted her assistant to arrange a low-key trip. No press, just a few Secret Service agents. Imagining herself wrestling with an MRE packet, she chuckled. "This is either going to be epic, or a disaster. Pray for my taste buds." Then she hopped in the car, heart racing, ready for an unforgettable day. The black SUV glided through Kentucky's winding roads, carrying Karoline Leavitt to Fort Campbell under a gray sky. She texted her assistant, "No press, no drama, just grab some TikTok clips." But inwardly, she was a bit nervous. As White House press secretary, she was used to facing reporters, but sitting down to eat apocalypse food with soldiers, that was a new kind of battle. Fort Campbell came into view through the window, a maze of barracks, Humvees and an airfield where helicopters roared. The smell of diesel mixed with damp earth, after a light rain. Young soldiers jogged in training, shirts soaked, while others gathered near the mess hall, laughing and playing cards. Leavitt stepped out of the car, her navy coat and white sneakers standing out in the military setting. Curious soldiers turned to look. "Is that really Leavitt?" one whispered. She waved, flashing her signature smile. "Yo, you guys ready for me to flop this MRE, or what?" Captain Jessica Harper, tall in her crisp uniform, stepped forward to greet Leavitt. "Welcome to Fort Campbell, Miss Leavitt," Jessica said, her voice warm but with a hint of mischief. "Ready to try the meal soldiers call the forgotten dream." Leavitt laughed. "If I survive, I want a medal." Jessica led her across the grounds, explaining MREs briefly. "These aren't just food, they're what keep us going in deserts, jungles or rainy days like today." Leavitt nodded, but her eyes scanned the base, taking in its grit and camaraderie. They entered the mess tent, a simple space with a green canvas roof and dirt floor. A folding table held dull brown MRE packets, water bottles and camp chairs. A group of young soldiers stood waiting, their eyes curious and eager. Leavitt turned to Jessica, whispering, "This feels like I'm about to go on American Idol, but instead of singing I'm eating weird stuff." Jessica laughed. "Don't worry, no one's judging, just don't spill the heater water." Leavitt pulled out her phone, filming a quick TikTok with Jessica. "Okay, Fort Campbell, here we go." "Who thinks I'm gonna love this?" she said, holding up an MRE packet with a comically grimaced face. The soldiers clapped, a few shouting, "You got this." The mood lightened, but Leavitt sensed their gazes, not just curiosity, but expectation. They wanted her to understand, even a little, what their lives were like. Deep down, Leavitt grew more serious. Looking at the young soldiers, she thought about her responsibility. As a spokesperson, she talked about the military in briefings, but now she was here, face to face with real people who lived on MREs and sacrificed daily. I have to get this right, she told herself. She wasn't just here to eat or film, she was here to listen. Turning to Jessica, she said, "All right, Captain, lead me into this battle. But if this tastes bad, I'm gonna need a White House coffee to recover." The mess tent at Fort Campbell vibrated with laughter, as Karoline Leavitt held up an MRE packet labeled mystery meat, like it was a live grenade. "Okay, Fort Campbell crew, this looks like it was dug up from Area 51's secret bunker," she exclaimed, her eyes twinkling with mischief. The soldiers around the table burst out laughing, some clapping. Captain Jessica Harper, standing by the folding table covered with dull brown MRE packets, crossed her arms and smiled. "Miss Leavitt, don't judge it yet," Jessica said, her voice warm but laced with teasing. "Pick one, bean chili, beef stew, or the mystery meats that Private Ethan calls a packaged nightmare." Leavitt grimaced, turning to Ethan Rivera, 19, who was sneakily filming a TikTok on his phone. "Ethan, if I flop this, you've got to add a filter to make me look less tragic, deal?" Ethan laughed loudly, giving a thumbs up. "Deal, but MREs don't spare anyone, Miss Leavitt." Leavitt sat on a camp chair in the tent, facing the soldiers, Ethan with his bright smile and wild curly hair, Sergeant Maya Johnson, 34, tough-looking but with warm eyes, and Private Olivia Brooks, 21, a new recruit, her hands clasped tightly from nerves. The tent felt like a family gathering, but instead of pizza or burgers, they had MREs. The smell of damp earth from the rain outside seeped through the green canvas roof, mingling with the rustle of plastic packets on the table. Light from a few hanging bulbs cast a glow on the soldiers' eager faces, and Leavitt felt like she was stepping into an episode of a survival show. "If I get through this, I deserve to be on the cover of Vogue," she joked, making Olivia giggle. Jessica slid a beef stew MRE toward Leavitt. "Safest choice," she said, winking. "But you've got to heat it yourself, no White House chefs to help." Leavitt picked up the flameless heater, reading the instructions with a baffled look. "Add water, fold the bag. Wait, is this a recipe or an SAT test?" she asked, making the tent roar with laughter. She opened the heater, poured water from a plastic bottle, but her clumsy hands spilled some onto the table, soaking her sleeve. "Oh no, I just destroyed national food security," she cried, feigning panic and raising her hands in surrender. Ethan jumped in to save the day, grabbing the heater for her. "Miss Leavitt, this is easier than your press briefings. Pour, fold and pray it doesn't explode." Leavitt winked. "Praying's my specialty, but this needs a full-on Virgin Mary miracle." As the MRE heated, Jessica shared a brief rundown. "These are built to survive wars, deserts, or blizzards. Every packet is the work of scientists, veterans, and people like me, trying to make it tasty enough that soldiers don't toss it." Leavitt nodded, but her eyes drifted to the soldiers. She realized MREs weren't just food, they were part of their lives, from grueling training days to lonely nights far from home. "So, any tips to survive this?" she asked, half joking. "Because I don't want my taste buds filing for resignation." Maya spoke up, her voice low and steady. "Add hot sauce, covers up all the stew's sins." Olivia, more timid, chimed in, "Or close your eyes and pretend it's mom's cooking." Ethan held up an MRE candy packet from another bag. "Eat this first to build up courage for the main course." Leavitt laughed, grabbing the hot sauce packet and sniffing it. "This smells better than the stew already," she said, making Jessica chuckle. "You just summed up 50 years of MRE history in one sentence." Leavitt tore open the sauce, squeezed some onto her hand to taste, and winced. "Okay, this is spicier than a hit piece about me on social media." She ripped open the beef stew, steam rising with a hard-to-place smell, like mashed potatoes mixed with canned meat. "It smells like forgotten effort," Leavitt remarked, sending the tent into hysterics. She grabbed a plastic spoon, poked at the stew, her eyes skeptical. "If I post this moment, what's the right hashtag? #sendhelp, or
Why did he agree?
Ethan jumped in. Leavitt B's MRE. Guaranteed viral in 5 minutes. Leavitt sighed dramatically, but inside, she started to feel the moment's weight. The soldiers weren't just watching her eat, they were sharing a piece of their world, one full of challenges she only knew through speeches. She turned to Maya, curious, where have you eaten this, and still kept your sanity? Maya smiled, her gaze distant. Iraq, 2010, under a muddy rain in a bomb shelter. MREs aren't great, but they're the one thing that didn't ditch me when everything shook. Maya's words stopped Leavitt cold. She looked at the MRE, suddenly seeing it wasn't just a meal, it was a fragment of bigger stories. Stories of sacrifice, resilience, and camaraderie. So you're telling me a war story through this stew packet? She asked, half joking, half serious. Maya nodded. Every MRE has a story. You'll find yours today, I bet. Leavitt felt a surge of new emotions. As a spokesperson, she often talked about the military in press briefings, but now she was here, face to face with real people who lived on MREs, and carried burdens she'd never experienced. She turned to Olivia, wanting to draw the shy soldier into the conversation. What about you, Olivia? Any tricks to make this less scary? Olivia blushed, but smiled. I hum songs in my head to forget the taste, like Taylor Swift's Shake It Off. Leavitt clapped. Genius. If this is bad, I'm singing Bad Bloods to get revenge on it. To keep the fun going, Leavitt turned to Ethan. And you? Got any hacks to turn an MRE into a party? Ethan shrugged, grinning. I pretend I'm Gordon Ramsay, like this stew is an absolute disgrace, then eat it all. The tent erupted in laughter, and Leavitt high-fived Ethan. You just won Best Supporting Actor, she said. She grabbed the candy packet from the MRE, tore it open, and tried it. Okay, this is fine, like corner store candy, but I'm still worried about the stew. Jessica clapped, breaking the quiet. All right, Miss Leavitt, don't let that stew get cold. Take a bite, or are you making us wait until Thanksgiving? Leavitt picked up the spoon, took a deep breath, and winked at Ethan. Film this, because if I grimace, I want it to go viral for the right reasons. She scooped a spoonful of beef stew, sniffed it again, and made a face like she was about to taste alien cuisine. The soldiers leaned in, eyes gleaming with anticipation. This is for Miss Challenge, and for you guys, she said, her voice tinged with drama. Before taking the first bite, Leavitt turned to the group. If I survive, I want a Fort Campbell medal, okay? Ethan shouted, raising his phone. She's going for it. Get ready. The tent exploded with laughter, and Leavitt, mouth still full of stew, gave a thumbs up, eyes twinkling. She didn't know where this meal would lead her, but she knew one thing. The soldiers around this table were opening a world she was only beginning to explore, and she was determined to make it worthwhile. The mess tent at Fort Campbell fell silent for a split second as Karoline Leavitt brought the spoonful of beef stew to her mouth. The soldiers, Ethan Rivera, Maya Johnson, Olivia Brooks, and Captain Jessica Harper, leaned in, eyes sparkling with anticipation. Karoline took a bite, chewed slowly, then grimaced. Oh my gosh, my taste buds just enlisted for war, she exclaimed, sending the tent into a roar of laughter. Ethan, filming a TikTok, shouted, she survived. #Leavitt vs MRE is officially viral. Leavitt gave a thumbs up, but her eyes twinkled mischievously. Okay, it's not bad, but it's not trending on any food charts either. She set the spoon down, eyeing the stew skeptically. Honestly, whoever made this deserves a medal for creativity, she said, half joking. But if I were Gordon Ramsay, I'd yell, this stew is an absolute disgrace. Ethan clapped, laughing hard. Told you Miss Leavitt is White House Gordon Ramsay. Jessica smiled, adding MREs don't need to be tasty, just keep soldiers alive. And we're still here, right? Leavitt nodded, but her gaze swept over the soldiers. She realized this stew wasn't just a funny challenge. It was part of their lives, a piece of their tough days. To keep the vibe lively, Leavitt turned to the group. Okay, I tried it. Now it's your turn. Tell me. How do you eat this and stay happy? She winked at Olivia, who was still shy. Olivia, you start. Got any secrets, or are you just super brave? Olivia blushed but smiled. I think about home when I eat. My mom makes amazing sandwiches, so I pretend this is her food. Leavitt clapped. Genius. I'll try imagining this as my favorite pasta. What else? Olivia hesitated, then said softly, I send most of my pay home to help my parents with debt. MREs are the cheapest meal, so I don't complain. Olivia's words silenced the tent. Leavitt felt a wave of emotion. She looked at the 21-year-old, her eyes bright but carrying the weight of responsibility. Olivia, you just made this stew a superhero, Leavitt said, her voice soft. Sending money home, that's real strength. Olivia smiled, and Maya patted her shoulder like a big sister. Leavitt turned to Maya. What about you? I bet you've got a whole MRE playbook. Maya laughed, her eyes distant. I learned to love MREs in Iraq. Once I ate one in a bomb shelter under rain. It wasn't great, but it was the only thing reminding me I was still alive. Maya's story stopped Leavitt in her tracks. She looked at the MRE packet, suddenly seeing it as more than food. It was a symbol of resilience. You just turned this packet into an epic tale, she said, half joking. Do all soldiers have a memorable MRE moment like that? Maya nodded. Every packet has a story. Yours is starting now. Leavitt smiled, but inside, she felt the weight of responsibility. She wasn't just here to film or joke. She was here to understand these people. Wanting to pull Ethan in, Leavitt winked at him. What about you, TikTok star? How do you turn an MRE into a feast? Ethan shrugged, grinning. I pretend I'm a food vlogger. Like today we've got gourmet beef stew, 5 stars. Then I eat it all. The tent roared with laughter, and Leavitt high-fived him. You need a YouTube channel now. But seriously, where's the most memorable place you've eaten an MRE? Ethan thought for a moment, then said, first training mission, sitting under a tree, starving. My mom sent Puerto Rican food, but I ran out. That MRE saved me, and I thought, okay, I'm a real warrior now. Ethan's story made Leavitt smile. She looked at the 19-year-old dreaming of being a YouTuber after his service, and saw a bit of herself in him. Young, ambitious, but ready to sacrifice. You just made me want to try the MRE again, she said. But first I need to share something. You guys are being real, so I'll be real too. She took a breath, her voice softer. I'm a young mom, just had a baby boy not even a year old. The White House job is like a Roman Colosseum. Some days I wonder if I'm enough. But sitting here, hearing you, I realize we're all fighting just on different battlefields. Leavitt's words silenced the tent. Jessica nodded, her eyes full of respect. You're right, she said. MREs don't just feed the body, they feed the spirit. Like when I was training in the desert, with just an MRE and a letter from my dad. It made me feel close to home. Leavitt was moved, thinking of her son, and the letters she hoped he'd read someday. Jessica, you just made me want to write a letter right now, she said, her voice catching. You guys make me feel small, but in the best way. To lighten the mood, Leavitt grabbed an MRE cracker packet. Okay, I need dessert to lift my spirits. She tore it open, took a bite, and grimaced. This is like a cracker from the last century. Ethan laughed. That's the peak of MRE dessert. Leavitt shook her head, but she felt the connection growing. She turned to the group. Honestly, you eat this every day and still smile. You're superheroes. Maya smiled. Not superheroes, just soldiers. But thanks. Leavitt looked around, her gaze lingering on each person. Ethan, with his dreams and optimism. Olivia, with her heart sacrificed for family. Maya, with quiet strength from war days. Jessica, who brought her here with a letter. She thought about her role, not just a spokesperson, but a storyteller. I came here thinking I'd film a funny video, she said, her voice earnest. But you're teaching me about courage. I promise to share your stories on social media or anywhere else. Ethan raised his phone. Miss Leavitt, this needs to go on TikTok now. #MRE Heroes. The tent laughed, but Leavitt felt a wave of warmth. She scooped another spoonful of stew, this time without wincing. Okay, I'm starting to like this, she said, winking. But don't anyone give me the mystery meat, because I'm not ready for that drama. Laughter rang out again, and Leavitt knew, whatever the stew tasted like, The stories around this table would stay with her forever. As the laughter in the tent settled, Karoline Leavitt set her spoon down, her eyes still sparkling from the stories of Ethan Rivera, Maya Johnson, Olivia Brooks, and Captain Jessica Harper. The MRE beef stew, though not tasty, had become a bridge bringing her closer to the soldiers. The tent felt warm, like an impromptu family gathered under the green canvas, with the soft patter of rain outside as backdrop. Leavitt sensed a shift in herself, from a spokesperson used to the spotlight to a listener, learning from real people. Jessica, sensing the moment was ripe, stepped to the table, pulling a folded yellowed envelope from her uniform pocket. "Miss Leavitt," she said, her voice lower, "before we go on, I want you to read this. It's from someone special." Leavitt raised an eyebrow, curious. "A letter. Not a bill for spilling the heater water, right?" She joked, making the tent laugh. But as she took the envelope, she felt its weight, not just paper but the story inside. "All right, I'm ready," she said, opening it, her eyes scanning the shaky but elegant handwriting. "Letter to the young soldiers at Fort Campbell," Leavitt read aloud, her voice clear. "I am Colonel Margaret Lee, who served in Vietnam in 1970. Miseries in my day were heavy tin cans, but they were companions in jungle nights, when fear outweighed hunger. Each bite was a reminder, I fought for those back home. Young soldiers, know your sacrifices are not forgotten. Thank you for carrying our story forward." Leavitt paused, her voice catching. Signed, Colonel Margaret Lee, U.S. Army, retired. The tent was silent, only the rain tapping outside. Leavitt looked up, her eyes misty. "My gosh, this hits harder than any White House speech I've ever heard," she said, trying to keep her tone light but unable to hide her emotion. She turned to Jessica. "She's 82 and still writing letters like this? I need to meet her to learn how to live." Ethan, still holding his phone, whispered, "Miss Leavitt, this has to go viral. The world needs to hear it." But before she could respond, Jessica smiled mysteriously and gestured toward the tent's entrance. The tent flap opened, and an elderly woman stepped in, leaning on a cane, her white hair gleaming but her posture straight, eyes blazing with life. "Colonel Margaret Lee," Jessica introduced, her voice proud. The tent erupted, everyone standing and clapping. Leavitt's jaw dropped, still holding the letter. No way," she exclaimed, rushing to help Lee. "You're really here? Am I living in a Hollywood movie?" Margaret laughed, her voice warm. "Miss Leavitt, I heard you dared to try an MRE, so I had to see it for myself." Leavitt guided Lee to a chair, eyes locked on her. "Mrs. Margaret, your letter just made this whole tent want to cry," she said. "Tell me, what were MREs like in your day?" Margaret sat, her gaze distant. "Tin cans, heavy as rocks, but every time I opened one I thought of my family in Ohio. Once I shared a can with a young nurse, and we laughed till our sides hurt despite the awful taste. Mysteries weren't just food, they were hope." Leavitt nodded, thinking of her son and the hope she had for him. "You just made me want to keep this MRE packet as a keepsake," she said. She turned to the soldiers, her voice trembling. "Guys, I came here thinking I'd film a fun video, but Mrs. Margaret and you all are giving me a bigger lesson. I want to say something, okay?" The tent nodded, Ethan raising his phone. Filming Miss Leavitt, Leavitt took a breath, stood, her eyes sweeping over everyone. "I came to Fort Campbell for #Music Challenge, thinking I'd get a viral moment. But you, Ethan, Olivia, Maya, Jessica and Mrs. Margaret, have shown me something deeper. Mysteries aren't just food, they're stories of courage, family, people like Olivia sending money home, Maya surviving war, Ethan dreaming big while serving here." She paused, her voice catching. "I'm a young mom, my son can't talk yet, but I want him to grow up grateful for you. You don't just eat MREs, you live for the values they represent. I promise to tell your stories, on X, TikTok, press briefings, anywhere, because the world needs to know how amazing you are." The tent burst into applause, a few soldiers wiping eyes. Olivia smiled, Maya nodded, and Ethan shouted, "Miss Leavitt, you just slayed TikTok." Margaret took Leavitt's hand, whispering, "You have a warrior's heart, use it to tell our stories." Leavitt sat, heart pounding. She looked at Margaret, thinking of the letter and her own words. "Mrs. Margaret, what should I do to keep this promise?" she asked. Margaret smiled. "Listen, like you're doing, and don't be afraid to cry a little. It makes the story real." Leavitt laughed, wiping her eyes. "I'm trying not to cry, and failing," she said, making the tent laugh. Jessica clapped, breaking the silence. "Okay, Miss Leavitt, Mrs. Margaret, we need to eat more to celebrate this moment. Miss Leavitt, try the MRE cracker again." Leavitt grabbed the cracker packet, grimacing. "This still feels like an ancient artifact, but for Mrs. Margaret, I'll do it." She took a bite, feigning agony, making the tent roar. But inside, she knew this moment. The letter, the meeting, her speech had changed her. She wasn't just a spokesperson. She was a bearer of soldiers' stories to the world. She turned to Ethan. "Posted that video yet? Because I want the country to see Mrs. Margaret's the real star." Ethan raised his phone. "Uploading now, #MRE Heroes." Leavitt looked around, feeling a deep connection. The rain outside the Fort Campbell mess tent had stopped, leaving crisp air and puddles glinting under faint sunlight. Inside, laughter and applause lingered after Karoline Leavitt's speech and the surprise meeting with Colonel Margaret Lee. Leavitt sat back, still holding Margaret's letter, eyes shimmering with emotion. The soldiers, Ethan Rivera, Maya Johnson, Olivia Brooks and Captain Jessica Harper, looked at her with newfound respect. The tent was no longer just an MRE testing ground. It had become a space for stories and bonds. Jessica stood clapping. "Miss Leavitt, you survived the MRE and made us cry," she said, winking. "But before you head back to the White House, how about a walk around the base? You need to see the real Fort Campbell." Leavitt nodded eagerly, adjusting her coat. "Lead the way, Captain. But if there's a fitness test, I'm out." The tent laughed, and Ethan raised his phone. "Miss Leavitt on a base tour. TikTok's about to explode." The group left the tent, stepping onto the base grounds. Leavitt breathed in the cool air, watching young soldiers jog in training, Humvees roll by, and helicopters roar in the distance. Jessica led her and the soldiers to a quiet corner, where a memorial wall bore the names of fallen soldiers. Leavitt stopped, reading a few names, her heart heavy. "These are people who ate MREs, right?" she asked, her voice soft. Jessica nodded. "They ate them, laughed like us, and left this legacy." Leavitt touched the wall, thinking of Margaret's letter. "I won't forget them," she said, her voice firm. On the way back to the mess tent, Leavitt turned to Jessica. "I want to do something so today's story doesn't end here," she said. "A campaign, inviting people to try MREs, send thank you letters to soldiers, share stories like Mrs. Margaret's." Jessica smiled. "Awesome idea. You're such a government type." Leavitt pulled out her phone, filming a short video with the group. "Yo world, this is Fort Campbell," she said, holding up an MRE packet. "Try an MRE, send love to our soldiers. Because they don't just eat this, they're heroes." Ethan, Maya and Olivia appeared in the video, giving thumbs ups, making the group burst into laughter. Back in the tent, the soldiers surprised Leavitt with a gift, a Fort Campbell badge engraved with honorary warrior. Olivia shyly said, "You didn't just try an MRE, you listened to us. This is yours." Leavitt held the badge, eyes misty. "Guys, I don't deserve this," she said, voice catching. "But I'll treasure it." Ethan handed her a handwritten letter, scrawled by the group. "Read it later, Miss Leavitt," he said, winking. "But don't cry on X." Leavitt laughed, hugging each one, feeling a profound connection. Suddenly Colonel Daniel Hayes, the base commander, entered the tent. Initially skeptical of the visit as a PR stunt, he now smiled. "Miss Leavitt, you've made us proud," he said. "And Captain Harper, as of today you're Major Harper." The tent erupted in applause, Jessica stunned. Leavitt hugged Jessica, shouting, "Congrats, Major. Now you owe me coffee." Jessica laughed, "Make me cry again, and I'm taking back the MRE." The mood was electric, but Leavitt sensed the goodbye approaching. She stood in the tent's center, looking at the soldiers and Margaret. "I came here thinking I'd film a fun video," she said, voice earnest. "But you've given me a new family. I'll carry your stories, Olivia's, Ethan's, Maya's, Jessica's, Mrs. Margaret's, to everyone. The tent applauded, and Margaret took her hand. "You're a bridge, Karoline," she said. "Keep it bright." Leavitt nodded, eyes stinging. It was time to leave. Leavitt stepped onto the grounds, sunlight glinting off the badge in her hand. The soldiers lined up, waving, Ethan still filming, shouting, "Miss Leavitt, come back." She turned, holding up the badge. "Fort Campbell, you're home, I'll be back. But next time I'm bringing pizza." Laughter rang out, and Leavitt got in the car, watching the base fade through the window. She opened the group's letter, reading, "Miss Leavitt, you made us feel heard. Thank you for being one of us." A tear fell, but she smiled. The SUV carried Karoline Leavitt back to Washington, D.C., but her mind stayed at Fort Campbell, where the stories of Ethan Rivera, Maya Johnson, Olivia Brooks, Major Jessica Harper, and Colonel Margaret Lee echoed. The Fort Campbell badge rested in her coat pocket, and the soldier's letter was tucked carefully in her wallet. Comments from soldiers, students, and netizens flooded in. "Miss Leavitt, you made us proud," one wrote. A student commented, attaching a photo of an MRE packet. Leavitt smiled, knowing the campaign was becoming a movement. Weeks later, videos popped up everywhere. A group of Texas high schoolers, opening MREs, grimacing but laughing, sending thank you letters to soldiers. A Florida veteran shared an MRE story from the Gulf War, eyes teary. A famous TikToker tried mystery meat, making funny faces and calling out, "Eat an MRE, send love to the troops." Leavitt watched each video, heart racing. Ethan needs to see this, she thought, recalling the boy dreaming of YouTube. She texted Jessica, "Major, you started a storm." Jessica replied, "You brought it to life. Fort Campbell's so proud." Leavitt decided to take the MRE campaign to new heights. She organized a White House event, inviting Jessica, Ethan, Maya, Olivia, and Margaret to share their stories. The East Room was simply decorated, a table with MRE packets, a large screen showing videos from across America, and a banner reading, "Thank you, soldiers." The event was live-streamed on X, drawing millions of views. Leavitt, in a navy suit with the Fort Campbell badge on her chest, opened with Gen Z flair. "Yo world, this is #MRE Challenge, at the White House," she said, holding up an MRE packet. "Today we're not just eating MREs, we're honoring the heroes who inspired this campaign." Jessica took the stage first, now Major Harper, recounting the challenge letter she sent Leavitt. "I just wanted her to understand us," she said. But she did more. She brought our stories to the nation. Ethan, with his radiant smile, shared his YouTuber dream, and how MREs taught him patience. Maya spoke of Iraq, her voice low. MREs were companions in dark days. Miss Leavitt helped us remind people of that. Olivia, less shy, talked about sending money home and receiving thank you letters from students. "I don't feel alone anymore," he said, eyes shining. Colonel Margaret Lee, though aided by a cane, stepped up with commanding presence. "I wrote that letter to let young soldiers know they're remembered," she said. Miss Leavitt turned it into a movement. Leavitt, standing beside her, wiped her eyes. "Mrs. Margaret, you're the real star," she said, making the room laugh. She turned to the online audience. Everyone joined the MRE challenge. Write letters, share stories. Because our soldiers deserve to hear we're grateful. The event ended with a surprise. A group of Kentucky students appeared, carrying dozens of thank you letters for soldiers. A 12-year-old girl read hers. "Dear soldiers, I tried an MRE, and it wasn't great, but I know you eat it to protect us. Thank you for your bravery." Leavitt hugged the girl, voice catching, "Kiddo, you just melted the whole White House." The room applauded, and Leavitt thought of her son, hoping he'd grow up with such a heart. After the event, Leavitt held a press conference, clutching Margaret's letter. "MREs aren't just about eating," she told reporters. "They're how we connect with soldiers from Fort Campbell to bases worldwide. I've learned my role isn't just speaking, it's telling stories that shift perspectives." A reporter asked, "Will you keep this campaign going?" Leavitt smiled. "No cap, I'm pushing MREs until everyone knows Colonel Margaret Lee's name." In her White House office, Leavitt rewatched videos, from a mom trying MREs with her kids, to firefighters eating MREs in support. She got a text from Ethan, "Miss Leavitt, I started my YouTube channel. First videos about MREs, thanks to you. She grinned, replying, "You're the star, Ethan. Send the link." Another text from Jessica, "Fort Campbell's getting hundreds of letters. You did it." Leavitt felt a warmth, like when she held the Fort Campbell badge. That night, Leavitt sat alone, rereading the soldier's letter. She thought of her role, not just a spokesperson, but a bridge, as Margaret said. She opened X, seeing a new video, an elderly veteran holding an MRE, sharing war stories and thanking #Metri Challenge for making him feel remembered. Leavitt wiped her eyes, posting, "MREs aren't just food, they're love for our soldiers. Thank you, Fort Campbell, for changing me." Months after the White House #Metri Challenge, Karoline Leavitt quietly boarded an SUV headed to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. No press, no announcement. In her bag she carried a box of homemade cookies, the treat she promised to bring instead of MREs. The #Metri Challenge had become a phenomenon, with millions joining from students to veterans, sending letters and videos thanking soldiers. But Leavitt wanted to return to where it began, to thank those who changed her. Ethan Rivera, Maya Johnson, Olivia Brooks, Major Jessica Harper, and Colonel Margaret Lee. The Fort Campbell badge still sat on her desk, a reminder of the stories she swore to tell. Fort Campbell emerged under a clear blue sky, no rain like before. Leavitt stepped out, in a simple coat and sneakers, cookies in hand. Nearby training soldiers glanced over, some recognizing her. "Miss Leavitt? For real?" one shouted. She waved, smiling, "Yo, I'm back." But this time with better food than MREs. Word spread fast, and soon Jessica, Ethan, Maya, and Olivia appeared outside the mess tent, eyes mixing surprise and joy. "Miss Leavitt, what are you doing here?" Jessica asked, beaming. Leavitt held up the cookie box. "I promised pizza, but cookies are what I didn't burn in the kitchen. Thank you all." Ethan, now more confident, hugged her. "You're a legend. My YouTube channel has an MRE video because of you." Maya and Olivia laughed, pulling up chairs. "Sit, Miss Metri Chera, Leavitt," Maya said. "But don't think we're letting you skip MREs again." Leavitt grimaced. "I still haven't forgotten the mystery meat." "Don't remind me." The group sat around the familiar folding table, but instead of MREs, Leavitt opened the box of chocolate chip cookies. Not as viral as MREs, but at least no heater needed, she joked, making everyone laugh. Jessica grabbed an MRE from the tent's corner, winking, "To be fair, you eat cookies, we eat this." Leavitt shook her head. "You guys are true warriors, but I'll try a bite for love." She tore open a beef stew MRE, scooped a spoonful and ate, this time without wincing. "Okay, it's still not trending, but you guys are," she said, giving a thumbs up. They began sharing updates since their last meeting. Ethan excitedly talked about his new YouTube channel, its first MRE video racking up thousands of views. "I called it MRE Vlogs, thanks to you, Miss Leavitt," he said. Maya, now preparing to leave the service, shared plans to open a small coffee shop. "I'll name a drink MRE Latte, who's brave enough?" she teased. Olivia, glowing, talked about the letters she got from kids inspired by #Metri Challenge. One wrote, "Olivia, I want to be strong like you. I cried all night," she said, eyes shining. Major Harper, now, spoke about Fort Campbell. "We've received hundreds of letters. Young soldiers read them and feel seen." Leavitt listened, thinking of Margaret Lee's letter. "How's Mrs. Margaret doing?" she asked. Jessica smiled. "She sends her regards. Says you're the Army's new spark." Leavitt wiped her eyes. "She's making me cry again. I need to see her." The group pulled out a stack of letters, reading them aloud. One from a 10-year-old boy said, "Dear soldiers, I tried an MRE, and it was hard to swallow, but I know you eat it to keep us safe. Thank you for being brave." Leavitt grinned. "This kid needs to meet Ethan. They'd dominate TikTok." Another from a veteran, #Metri Challenge reminds me of Vietnam days. "Thank you, Miss Leavitt, for showing we're not forgotten." Leavitt choked up. "Guys, I just started the campaign, but you're making it alive." A warm atmosphere enveloped the tent. Leavitt looked around, reflecting on the journey from a challenge letter to a national movement. "I came here the first time out of curiosity," she said, voice earnest. But you, Ethan, Maya, Olivia, Jessica gave me a family. It's not just Mipperese, it's how we say thank you to you. Ethan raised his phone. Miss Leavitt, can I film this? TikTok needs more #MRE heroes. She laughed. Film it, but don't catch me crying on camera. As the sun set, Leavitt stood, hugging each person. Fort Campbell, you're home, she said. I'll be back, and next time I'm learning to cook MREs with Major Harper. Jessica winked. Watch out, you'll get hooked. She stepped onto the grounds. Soldiers waving, Ethan shouting, Miss Leavitt, keep that badge shining. She held up the Fort Campbell badge, smiled, and got in the car, heart full. Back in Washington, Leavitt sat in her office, White House lights twinkling outside. She opened a new letter from a student. Miss Leavitt, I saw the videos and want to be a soldier to protect people. Thank you. She hugged her young son, reading it to him, though he didn't understand. Buddy, one day you'll know how amazing the folks at Fort Campbell are, she whispered. She thought of Ethan, Maya, Olivia, Jessica, and Margaret, who taught her that storytelling is the most powerful way to connect. Leavitt posted one final X update. #MRE challenge is about love, courage, and family. Fort Campbell, thank you for giving me the world. She looked at the badge on her desk, smiling. The MRE packets, letters, and smiles from Fort Campbell had become part of her. A reminder that sometimes the smallest meals tell the biggest stories, and she knew her mission to bridge those stories would never stop. The story of Karoline Leavitt's journey in Karoline Leavitt Tries the Military Meal. Her honest reaction leaves the room in laughter and tears, reflects core American values today. Community connection, gratitude for those who serve, and the power of social media to spread meaning. In modern America, where fast-paced lives and political polarization sometimes obscure shared values, this story offers a practical lesson in listening and honoring personal stories to build empathy. Leavitt, a Gen Z spokesperson, entered Fort Campbell with curiosity and humor, but through tasting MREs and hearing from soldiers like Ethan, Maya, Olivia, and Margaret Lee, she learned that everyone, soldier or civilian, carries a story worth cherishing. The #MRE challenge, sparked by a small dare, spread across America, from students writing thank you letters to veterans sharing memories, showing the power of small acts in uniting communities. The takeaway: in our busy lives, we need to pause to listen and act for others, even through simple gestures like sharing a meal or a letter. Try what Leavitt did. Connect with someone outside your usual circle, like a soldier, a public worker, or a neighbor, and ask about their story. Use social media, as Leavitt used X and TikTok, to amplify positive stories instead of arguments. Finally, as Margaret advised, listen and don't be afraid to cry. Empathy is how we build a more united America. Subscribe to the channel to keep spreading #MRE challenge and inspiring stories from soldiers like Ethan, Maya, and Olivia. Thank you for joining us, and see you in the next video with more unforgettable moments.